For generations, Southampton Water and its internationally famous port have bid welcome to liners and their passengers from far and distant lands. Approaching berths 38 and 39, the Queen Elizabeth II terminal is a familiar sight to the people of Southampton, the one and only QE2, flagship of the Cunard line, arriving back at her home port. The cruise ship Canberra regularly sails from Southampton to the Mediterranean, Atlantic Isles and Scandinavia between April and December. During the winter months, she undertakes a world cruise. Southampton is Britain's premier cruise passenger port and provides the most up-to-date facilities for every conceivable kind of shipping. The port is busy day and night all year round. Millions of tons of cargo have been loaded and unloaded, and millions of passengers have arrived and departed from Southampton's quays. The port boasts one of the finest natural harbours in the world, with the remarkable double tide effect, which gives extended periods of rising or standing water. The port's deep water can accommodate the world's largest container ships, tankers and passenger liners. Canberra is just one of the many famous ships which berth alongside the port's quays. Experienced cruise passengers who have done it all before are joined by newcomers who will soon find their sea legs. All part of the service. The crew quickly sort out passengers' luggage and deliver the suitcases to the cabins. Over 1,600 passengers are about to be transported to exotic ports of call at up to 22 knots. Operated by P&O Cruises, Canberra is a great favourite with the British. She has every facility for ocean-going holidaymakers, and there's always a rousing send-off. Keeping a watchful eye on all this activity in the port is the ABP Harbour Master, who is responsible for the safe passage of all vessels in Southampton water. The maritime history of the port can be traced back many centuries through peace and war. Beyond this gate, the West Gate, was the West Quay. In 1415, King Henry V's army marched through this gate and embarked on ships for France and the Battle of Agincourt. Another departure of great historical significance was in 1620. The Pilgrim Fathers left West Quay for America in the Mayflower. The Mayflower Memorial commemorates the unique relationship between Southampton and America. Town Quay is the oldest surviving quay in Southampton. Today it's a major tourist attraction with shops, restaurants, bars, offices and a 136-berth marina. The fast ferry service to and from the Isle of Wight is operated by Red Funnel ferries. Two catamarans, Red Jet 1 and Red Jet 2, each with 130 seats, operate between Town Quay and Cowes. They complete a crossing in just over 20 minutes. A regular visitor to Town Quay during the summer months is the Waverley, the world's last sea-going paddle steamer. Whole-day cruises take passengers to the Isle of Wight and other destinations along the south coast. Pier House, which was constructed in 1926, is the only surviving building on the Royal Pier. Red Funnel have a second berth situated between the Royal Pier and Town Quay. They've been operating a freight and passenger service across the Solent for more than 130 years. Roll-on, roll-off facilities enable commercial vehicles, cars and caravans to cross between Southampton and Cowes in just under 1 hour. Ocean Village has been redeveloped from Southampton's two oldest eastern docks. They were originally known as the Outer Dock and Inner Dock. Where the wharfside sheds and cranes once operated, there's now a unique development of houses and apartments, many with their own waterside berths. The attractive facilities for visitors include a shopping mall with bars, cafes and restaurants. During the spring and summer months, there are many special events at Ocean Village. There's an annual charity raft race and other local fundraising activities. Waterfront Southampton has also become a major venue for international sailing events. Office blocks now cover the Inner Dock, which was filled in. A 5-screen cinema is a popular entertainment venue. Queen Victoria officially opened the Empress Dock in 1890. The dock was constructed to enable the deepest laden vessels of the time to enter or leave at any state of the tide. In addition to passenger ships, many different cargoes were imported and exported from the Empress Dock. There were mechanized conveyors for the handling of bananas. Gantries were extended over the ship's holds, and stems of bananas were loaded onto an endless chain of canvas slings, then transferred to horizontal belt conveyors, and finally sorted in the quayside sheds for distribution. The quays are still used by a variety of ships associated with specialized services. Empress Dock is now home for the powerful Red Funnel tugs, which nudge, pull and push all manner of vessels when they arrive and depart from the various quays in the port, including container ships, bulk carriers and passenger liners. 2 of the tugs have a firefighting capability and carry detergent to assist in pollution control. Southampton has always been the major trooping port in peacetime and wartime.
The outbreak of war in 1939 meant that Southampton's normal traffic was to diminish daily, while her wartime traffic increased as our factories turned plowshares into tanks and guns. Southampton became a frontline port overnight. Not a new role, she'd played it so well in the last war. Supplies for the BEF began to arrive at Southampton for shipment in vast quantities. The docks and the ships were fully prepared to cope with these urgent dispatches. In addition to the supplies already being dealt with, the men themselves arrived on foot, in trucks and in trains, to be sent across the channel. The increasing tempo of life at the docks did not impair the proverbial smooth operation for which Southampton is rightly celebrated. These were days of intensive activity. The docks' quays were crowded with troops and supplies, and the Southern Railway staff worked ceaselessly in cooperation with the military to perform titanic feats of shipping in preparation for the first big offensive across the Channel. Well-known liners anchored in Southampton's waters steamed away to become transports for Dominion troops. Many southern railway ships, long familiar to holidaymakers, went on active service. Among them was the Sandown, which had operated on the Isle of Wight services for years. She had been refitted and equipped for her new and dangerous job, minesweeping. Southampton began to receive a large number of mine-damaged vessels. Between 1939 and VE Day, nearly 800 were reconditioned in the company's marine workshops. The disastrous fall of France brought the BEF crowding to the continental beaches, from which they were rescued by fleets of the now famous little ships. Southampton, with other British ports, welcomed a whole host of these vessels and offered them a temporary refuge at her hospitable quaysides. French troops, as well as our own, arrived hourly from across the Channel during a period of 2 weeks or more. All of them had to be fed, accommodated, and equipped for the next round of the fight.
The French soldiers arriving over 50 years ago would no doubt have been a little envious of the luxurious crossing enjoyed by passengers today on the Channel ferry service linking Cherbourg and Southampton. Continental ferry services have been an important part of the port scene for many years. Berth 30 now accommodates the Stena Normandy, operated by Stena Sea Link Line. The ferry terminal offers a comfortable area for passengers to relax before boarding the ferry. The departure lounge includes reception and ticket sales, currency exchange, refreshments and toilets. There are daily crossings all year round and double crossings during the peak summer season. On board, the show bar and lounge is the entertainment centre of the ship and features live cabaret and dancing. During the ship's short stay in port, the crew make her ready to receive the passengers due to sail on her next mini-cruise to Cherbourg. Passengers in the Renoir restaurant can make their choice from an à la carte menu, and during the crossing a resident pianist plays while they dine in the elegant atmosphere of the premier restaurant on board. A self-service restaurant is also available. The Stena Normandy carries up to 1,600 passengers in 900 cabins and comfortable reclining seats. There's also space for 450 cars or 70 trucks on what's described as the stylish route to Western France. Other facilities awaiting the passengers include the duty and tax-free shop, cinema, teenagers' hideaway, and special attractions for children. And if you fancy a flutter, there's a casino and slot machines. Shipments of cars, jeeps, trucks, tractors and buses, anything on wheels, are imported and exported through the port. Berths 34 and 35 are used regularly for this operation. Wallenius Lines are one of the biggest car carriers in the world and recognized as pioneers in the carriage of vehicles by sea. The Falstaff is an ocean-going multi-story car park sailing under the Swedish flag. She's capable of carrying 6,300 cars or 3,000 cars and 554 trucks. The Falstaff manifest on this occasion including one American tank. There are 2 dedicated grain storage facilities at berths 36 and 47. Lorries full of locally produced grain arriving at berth 36 silo are quickly processed. Details of the grain delivery are automatically logged in the computerized system. The loading of grain into the ship's holds and the vessel turnaround is accomplished at high speed. This ensures Southampton's premier position in the export of grain from the United Kingdom. Located at the southern tip of the eastern docks at berth 37 is the purpose-built Vessel Traffic Services Centre. Associated British ports are responsible for the safe navigation and pilotage of ships in the very busy Southampton water and central Solent. Commercial vessel movements are monitored and controlled by Southampton's harbour master, and the VTS Centre Operations Room is manned round the clock by professional marine staff. The most modern radar display equipment gives a detailed picture of the position of ships, and VHF radio equipment enables controllers to keep in touch with virtually every craft. ABP's modern marine facilities meet the demands of ship owners and stringent maritime regulations. At berths 38 and 39, the Queen Elizabeth II terminal is used by cruise ships and the liner QE2. Between April and December, QE2 operates a scheduled service between Southampton and New York in addition to various cruises. Adjustable passenger gangways are moved into position to bridge the gap between ship and shore with the aid of a dockside crane. After breakfast on board, nearly 1,800 passengers disembark. Their luggage is unloaded from the ship down mechanized conveyors and manhandled into the terminal building ready for collection. Tons of fresh food supplies are loaded onto conveyors and then placed in storerooms deep in the ship. Stores for the many shops on board are hoisted onto the deck by crane. These shops are a seagoing version of Fifth Avenue and Bond Street. There's even a branch of Harrods. When at sea, passengers can buy jewellery, perfume, cameras, designer clothes, souvenirs and duty-free items. Some of the crew who have finished their work take the opportunity of spending a few hours ashore. Others who have completed their tour of duty are on their way home for well-earned leave. There are 5 restaurants on board QE2. Between voyages, the Queen's Grill is tranquil. The tables have been meticulously laid, ready for the next sitting. The privilege of dining in this exclusive restaurant is reserved for passengers who have paid for superior accommodation. Featured as part of the decor is a polished wood plaque depicting the royal coat of arms. Over 600 passengers can dine in the Columbia restaurant at one sitting. On display in the restaurant is an engraved solid silver vase given to Samuel Cunard, the founder of the Cunard line in 1840. Maritime tradition continues to be observed in port and at sea. A cruise ship is heading down towards Southampton water. The two ships salute each other in time-honored manner. Within a few short hours, passengers start arriving by car and coach at the terminal for the next voyage. This modern passenger terminal, operated by Associated British Ports, has been designed to enable staff speedily to receive and process new arrivals through the departure lounge. Passengers check in at numerous reception desks. After the formalities, they can relax in the lounge. First-class facilities are provided for the short period before joining QE2. All aspects of this complex operation requires the closest of cooperation between ABP and Cunard to ensure a smooth transfer from shore to ship of up to 1,800 people. During the winter months, QE2 cruises around the world, visiting some of the most spectacular ports of call. The last few suitcases are transferred from the quayside to willing hands ready to receive them on board. Passengers now have the opportunity to explore their new surroundings. including the Queen's Room and Ocean Bookshop on quarterdeck.
Sean Angel. Please call the radio room on extension 3300. Thank you and good afternoon.
Departure time approaches, and an air of expectation pervades the ship, affecting passengers, officers and crew alike. Ships from many nations visit the port of Southampton. The US naval ship Zeus is alongside at berth 40. There are no dockside buildings anymore at this quay. This was the site of the International Cold Storage Ice Company, destroyed during World War II.
During 1941 and 42, the early raids on Southampton caused considerable havoc. The dock's ARP control post was destroyed, and other damage proved very extensive. Major casualties of the bombing of the docks were a flour mill and the great cold storage depot there. Raging fires consumed a month's rations for the whole of southern England. The heat of the blazing fats and foodstuffs was so intense that most of the water from the firemen's hoses turned to steam before it reached the flames. When the conflagration at last subsided, the ruined shells of offices, warehouses and sheds remained everywhere.
In the harbour master's office are ledgers dating from the turn of the century, which detail the arrivals and departures of all ships. One entry in this ledger always arouses great interest. The date, 10th of April 1912. Outwards, noon, Titanic. The master of the ship, Captain Smith. Bound for New York. The company, White Star Line. The bollards along the quayside at berth 43 held the mooring ropes of the most famous and tragic ship to leave Southampton. It was from this berth that the Titanic sailed on her never-to-be-completed maiden voyage. Commemorating the departure are members of the British and American Titanic Society. The Hotspur 6 ferry, flying the White Star Line flag, passes the departure berth and follows the Titanic's passage away from the quay. The most magnificent liners in the world have arrived and departed from berths 43 and 44.
Arrivals and departures invoke power and unfold splendor. The departure of the greatest liner is a story of a great queen and a retinue of self-important tugs that haul on cables, cross her bows at speed, and when she majestically turns, exert pressure against her side. Arrivals and departures, with cargoes of expectation. To those we say bon voyage and accurate landfall. To these we say welcome.
Wagons working outwards from Southampton. 8 covered, 5 open to Basing for Liverpool, Birmingham, Leicester, Blackpool. 2 covered to Woking for Reigate, Aldershot, Guildford and the southeast. 8 covered and 18 open to Feltham for the north and northeast, Leeds, Newcastle, Hull.
Arrivals: Mauritania, Chusan, Dominion Monarch, Isle of Guernsey, New Amsterdam. Departures: Dilwara, Orange, Falaise, Moreton Bay, Winchester, Andes. Destination: Buenos Aires. Distance from Southampton, nautical miles, 6,119.
During the voyage over, the passengers will have been making their train reservations. The lists are all ready in the ship's travel bureau for the traffic controller when he goes aboard. It's his job to get the trains away on time. It's my job to get the baggage ashore quickly. It's a fairly tight scheduled operation. We have 8 unloading points to work the baggage from ship to shore. We use conveyors, escalators, cranes, electric trucks. And the 8 unloading points are timed to work together. These men have very likely been unloading fruit or meat the first half of the day. They take this like any other unloading job. Meanwhile, the telescopic gangways have been swung out and the first-class passengers start to come ashore. They assemble in the terminal reception hall, and they'll wait there until we've got all the heavy baggage into the customs hall and we've sorted it out alphabetically.
Ladies and gentlemen, passengers may now proceed to the customs hall for baggage examination. Thank you.
Passengers who are leaving by road go out at the north end of the hall. Train passengers go out at the other end, down the escalators, and straight onto the platform where the train is waiting for them. There's less than 90 minutes between the Queen coming in and the first boat train going out, and there's a lot to do in that time. I work in closely with Mr. Hatch, the traffic controller. Of course, you know, it's difficult to estimate just how long people will take to go through customs. But generally, we get the trains away nicely on time.
When Cunard Line moved its passenger operation from Liverpool to Southampton in 1919, they requested Alexandra Towing to follow them and establish an operation in the port. They've been operating their service for over 70 years and now use berth 45 in the ocean dock. Barges and lighters without their own engines are moved around the port by tugs. They also assist in maneuvering the huge heavy lift vessel, a floating crane capable of lifting 200 tons almost anywhere around the port. Moored at berth 46 is the city's adopted warship, HMS Southampton. During a courtesy visit to the city, the officers and crew welcome members of the public on board for a tour of the ship. A town-class Type 42 guided missile destroyer, she was built in Southampton by Vosper Thornycroft. Southampton's home-built warship always receives an enthusiastic welcome home when she visits the port. The 280-strong crew organize various charity events to raise money for the city's disabled children. The present ship is the 6th proudly to bear the name of the city. The second phase of development was the western or new docks. While under construction, it was known as the Extension Quay. These deep water berths stretch for 1.5 miles. The new windward terminal at berth 101 was purpose-built for the banana shipping operation of Geest Line. They are one of the largest importers of bananas into the UK. On board, the refrigeration system is controlled by computer and automatically adjusts the temperature in each compartment. The windward islands of Martinique, Dominica, St. Lucia, Trinidad and St. Vincent are some 3,000 miles from Britain. 20,000 independent banana growers contribute their homegrown produce for shipment to Europe. In addition to the banana cargoes, there are exotic fruits, vegetables, nutmeg, pepper sauce and rum. During the early years of World War II, berth 101 was used for an entirely different operation.
In 1942, America began to ship to Britain considerable quantities of goods to meet both our war and domestic needs. These shipments increased almost daily, and in a short while, Lease Lend was in full operation. Southampton's dockside cranes now had a full-time job. Between the two wars, the Southern Railway had constructed a huge extension to the docks, embodying 7,000 feet of deep-water quays and the largest graving dock in the world, the King George V, as well as up-to-the-minute sheds and equipment. All these facilities proved of the greatest use in handling the lease lend traffic. Lease lend was eventually followed by the entry of the United States into world hostilities. and Britain soon became populated with thousands of Yanks who brought with them all the might and power of America's factories in the shape of countless engines of war in enormous quantities. They established a major port headquarters at Southampton docks, and the closest possible cooperation existed between them, the British military authorities, and the Southern Railway personnel. Southampton's quays and sheds had been designed to cope with huge export and import traffic. But the congestion at this time was such that the vast priority shipments overflowed into the King George V graving dock, where the heavy cranes provided handled tanks and guns with ease. American military police worked with the Southern Railway Force to guard the secrets of Southampton's dock area from prying eyes. To replace the ARP center, destroyed previously by bombs, a new docks control was built with walls of steel and concrete 14 feet thick. In addition to the work at the dockyard, the Southern Railway, in its own workshops at Eastleigh, constructed many strange craft to government orders. These were transported to Southampton and later used in the D-Day offensive. As the invasion 0 hour approached, the 7 miles of Southampton's dockyard quays presented an unforgettable sight. So many invasion craft were gathered there, they had to be berthed abreast. 18 of the Southern Railway's own fleet of vessels were taking part, and these pictures prove what an inestimable blessing the new docks extensions were to Britain in this war.
The Canary Fruit Terminal at berth 104 handles produce from the Canary Islands for this country. Fred Olsen Line's Bencomo regularly calls at the dedicated fruit terminal. During the winter months, shipments of tomatoes, aubergines, cucumbers, avocados, peppers and other fruits and vegetables are delivered from the Spanish islands off the west coast of Africa. Forklift trucks carry the produce from ship to shore and into one of the most modern facilities in the country, with its temperature-controlled storage space. Trains continue to be closely associated with the port. These specially designed car-carrying wagons are to be unloaded at Berkeley Junction. Cars are driven through the length of the train and down a ramp. They're then stored in car parks ready for export abroad. At berth 105, cars are about to be driven into the cavernous interior of the ship. With the continuing expansion in importing and exporting vehicles, ABP have installed many specialist facilities throughout the port. A stern loading ramp enables the cars to be driven on board. Within a few short hours, the ship will depart for its next destination. Southampton is one of the UK's fastest growing ports, and a major part of that growth involves vehicle handling. Mayflower Cruise Terminal handles the arrivals and departures of cruise ships and their passengers. Berth 106 welcomes many ships including Canberra, Island Princess, Sea Princess, Pacific Princess and Black Prince. Today it's the Royal Princess alongside. When the coaches and cars arrive, passengers are met by shoreside staff who guide them into the terminal building. Tickets and passports are quickly checked at the reception desks. Once the formalities have been completed, passengers make their way through the comfortable lounge with its first-class facilities, and then join the ship. Cruising was once considered to be just for the wealthy. Not anymore. Nowadays, thousands of working families enjoy being pampered afloat. Just 3 days out from Southampton, the ship will be passing the Rock of Gibraltar and heading for its first port of call. Some of the passengers are already enjoying sunny Southampton weather. A vast range of ships use the port facilities. Sardinia is alongside berth 107, a bulk cargo terminal. Quayside cranes towering above the ship are used to unload imported animal feed from the ship's hold to shoreside hoppers. This is known as being grab discharged. Maneuvering the jib, the projecting arm of the crane is a skilled operation. The crane drivers have acquired their expertise after many years of being perched aloft. Lorries on the quayside are then filled from the hoppers. Adjacent to the Sardinia is another ship, but in complete contrast to the bulk carrier, a luxurious floating city with every conceivable luxury. This is the Crown Odyssey of the Royal Cruise Line. Sailing under the Bahamian flag, she was built in 1988. During her 1 day in port, the passengers have had the opportunity of taking excursion tours, shopping locally, or lazing on board. Centrally located for the convenience of passengers is the cruise office, photographer, steward's office, and purser. Overlooking the port's Canary Fruit Terminal, passengers get together for cocktail hour and discuss their visit to Stonehenge or other attractions in the south of England. The unique 360-degree top of the Crown bar, lounge and dance floor is 2 decks above the ship's bridge. The continuing expansion in cruising has brought more and more sleek, ultra-modern passenger ships to the historic and world-famous port of Southampton. To complete the second phase of development, a dry dock known as the King George V Graving Dock was officially named by the King in 1933. It was used for an entirely different purpose during the Second World War.
During 1943 and 44, the King George V Graving Dock and others of Southampton's dry docks cradled the undertaking known afterwards to the world as the Mulberry Port Scheme. Briefly, the idea was to prefabricate a harbour formed of huge pierheads anchored to the seabed by mooring columns and linked to the land by floating moles on which our troops and their supplies could be landed when the invasion of France did take place. To overcome the danger of heavy seas, floating concrete breakwaters were built to protect the moles. All this work had to be kept top secret. These Cleopatra's Needles were the anchoring columns on which the pontoons rode up and down with the ebb and flow of the tide. In the foreground here is one of the moles on which the troops and supplies were landed. And here is a finished pierhead ready for towing across the channel. These are the concrete caissons which form the floating breakwater, a most important feature of the Mulberry Port undertaking. As it later proved, they were largely responsible for the success of the scheme, as the weather during the invasion period turned unexpectedly rough. An army of skilled and unskilled workmen were recruited to speed the job along to its completion in a seemingly impossibly short time, during which interference from enemy planes was surprisingly negligible. Partly finished caissons were floated out of the dry dock and towed to neighboring wet berths as soon as work on them had progressed sufficiently. Work recommenced in the dry docks at once. The Invicta, a Southern Railway supership, completed after the outbreak of war, had never fulfilled her intended peacetime function of conveying Golden Arrow passengers between England and the continent. In her wartime garb, she transported troops and their landing barges to the French coast. The Invicta carried 6 of these landing craft, slung alongside on davits of special design. Here are 2 more Southern Railway vessels, the Isle of Jersey and the Dinard, enrolled for war service with the Red Cross. A whole sisterhood of other ships of the company's fleet had done great war work in their various capacities. The Isle of Guernsey, the Biarritz, Maid of Orleans and the Canterbury, well remembered by Southern Railway cross-channel passengers in former years, are shown here awaiting their sailing orders. With the 2 exceptions of the Dinard and the Maid of Orleans, they survived their subsequent D-Day adventures without serious harm. D-Day came at last, and immediately afterwards, in the space of just 17 weeks, the traffic handled at Southampton exceeded in tonnage figures the trade of the whole of the last pre-war year. Between D-Day and VJ Day, some 14 months, 30.5 million gross tons of shipping entered the docks, and this excludes the small craft. 2.5 million tons of freight were handled over the quays, and 3.5 million servicemen passed through the port. Some 21,000 railway wagons and 770 locomotives were shipped. Men, vehicles and equipment continued to pour in for shipment. The tide of outward traffic was continually rising, and the work of loading and dispatching went on day and night. Southampton Docks, as the 14th major port of the United States Army, eclipsed all its own former records and earned a glorious reputation at this period. The Americans had one main idea, to carry the war to the heart of Germany till it was all over there. An interesting little ceremony marked the embarkation of the millionth Yank for the continent. It was attended by the Southern Railway Docks and Marine Manager, the Mayor of Southampton, and the American military officials. Many ships had now returned to Southampton, damaged in the Great Invasion Crusade. The dry docks were used continuously for the overhaul and repair of these vessels. The Dinard, one of the Southern Railway ships in the Red Cross service, struck a mine and limped home to Southampton half full of water. Continual pumping kept the Dinard afloat until she could receive proper attention. When she was dry docked, her extensive damage was revealed. The large hole in her hull and her internal injuries necessitated a long and enforced retirement from war service. Southampton Docks workshops now had another honorable casualty in their expert care. Other hospital ships were still carrying on with their good work. Arrangements for the reception of the invasion casualties at Southampton were absolutely complete. Ambulances and stretcher trolleys were swarming on the quays. Some cases were carried from the ships to the waiting trolleys. Colored American orderlies, patient and cat-like in their tread, performed a grand job in handling these casualties. Other cases were slung direct from the ships to the trolleys and wheeled away to trains waiting to carry them to hospitals standing by for this emergency rush. German prisoners began to arrive in considerable numbers. By now, they realized their game was up. The liberation of Cherbourg led to the early establishment of a train ferry service between Southampton and the French port for the quick conveyance of freight and rolling stock to the continent. 2 train ferry terminals were constructed at Southampton, and the company's own train ferry vessels and crews were employed in this service, remaining under Southern Railway control, as was the case of all the southern ships throughout the war. One important feature of the shipping of this traffic was the special link span, which worked like a drawbridge between ship and shore. By its use, whole trains of goods wagons, Red Cross coaches, and other rolling stock were enabled to run straight onto the ferry boats. The principle of the peacetime Dover to Dunkirk train ferry had been very successfully adapted to Southampton's wartime needs. Thus were the railroads of France replenished with the rolling stock necessary to carry the Allied armies to final victory. And later, to mark that victory, a plaque was unveiled at the dock gates. 1939 to 1945. This tablet was presented to the Southern Railway by the 14th Major Port, United States Army, in proud and glorious memory of the men and women of the forces of the United Nations who sailed from this port during the great war against aggression to secure the freedom of mankind.
50 years on, and the well-preserved plaque is still on display to the right of number 8 dock gate, often inspected by tourists to Southampton. The final phase of port expansion came with a £60 million investment. This was an ambitious plan to create new berths and facilities for containerization. Berths 201 and 202 are currently used for vehicle handling. Imported new vehicles are driven from ship to shore via a stern ramp and straight to a secure vehicle compound. The concrete paved area of 50 acres can accommodate up to 10,000 vehicles. Cars are thoroughly inspected before being distributed to dealers throughout the country. Vehicles requiring attention are quickly and efficiently brought up to standard in the modern Vehicle Enhancement Centre. The skilled craftsmen undertake mechanical repairs, respraying and many other tasks before the cars are cleared for distribution. Southampton was one of the first UK ports to concentrate resources on moving large shipments of vehicles. Regular shipments of cars are imported and exported, and the world's leading motor vehicle manufacturers have responded to this ABP commitment by substantially increasing the volume of vehicles transported. These modern roll-on, roll-off facilities have established the port as one of the UK's foremost vehicle handling centres. Southampton container terminals operate berths 204 to 206. Many container lines use one of the UK's busiest and best equipped box handling terminals. One of the main strengths of the port today lies in container traffic, and Southampton is among Britain's leading container ports. Before containerization was introduced, cargoes of every shape and size were manhandled from ship to shore. Operations were slow, labor-intensive, and as a result, ships remained in port for several days to discharge and load their cargoes. Today's modern ships spend far less time in port, and the volumes of cargoes handled are much greater than ever before. Containerization has revolutionized cargo handling, and the port provides the latest technology, facilities, and equipment. Southampton is one of the largest and best equipped container ports in the country. The terminal is working 7 days a week around the clock and annually handles in excess of 500,000 containers. A continuing program of investment has resulted in the box handling equipment being replaced and upgraded with the very latest key cranes and straddle carriers. Highly skilled labour is essential to a smooth operation, and the workforce are specialists in loading and unloading containers at the 3 berths. Jointly owned by Associated British Ports and P&O Containers, the terminal is one of the major container handling facilities in Northern Europe. The port has for a long time been recognised as an internationally important maritime centre. The development of new facilities continues unabated. The latest achievement is the construction of the Southampton Oceanography Centre, which is almost complete. With its own berths, 26 and 27 in the Empress Dock, the new centre will include laboratories, test tanks and a research aquarium. This will enable research to be carried out on the influence of the oceans on global warming and the development of autonomous remote submersibles. The Port of Southampton has been able to accommodate a great many changes and developments in recent years, enabling it to maintain its position as Britain's leading deep-sea port on the English Channel.